My poor family, they were like, things that frustrated me. So if it's combining with yes, absolutely. Yeah. Maybe even some sort of filtering. No, this is but either work for Saturday or Sunday. Brother, everybody. That's hilarious. We will have to say.
More appreciation.
I know. It's my buddy. Did they go to Mexico? I don't know. It's been a long time since I saw you. Maybe. Oh no, maybe it was my other friend. You didn't go recently. Oh, just go. I was thinking we were going to Ricardo and I are going to switch computers. Is that going to be a problem for you? Mine's dead. Is that okay? Yeah. Thank you, Ricardo. I don't think so. I don't know. Ready? I charged them up. That one, you can try it. I see Richard on TV, so it's not everything you.
Okay, it's 6:05. I will go ahead and call us to order. First, we're good to go on Soul Streaming. Okay. If for some reason, just chime in. If we have issues, just chime in and all our evidence. Okay. Let's start with roll call. I'll do this by calling out and having you announce. Bill here. Richard
here.
Crystal
here. Sorry. It's been a long day.
Ricardo?
There.
Christy?
Here.
Heidi?
Hey, here.
And Chair is here. So we are all present for October meeting or August meeting. If you'd all join me in flag salute, pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everybody back. And if everybody's had a chance to look over the agenda, we can deal with that one rather quickly. Take a motion to accept as presented.
I make a motion that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Bill? Aye. Richard?
Aye.
Crystal?
Aye.
Ricardo?
Aye.
Christie?
Aye.
Heidi?
Aye.
Chair votes for. Our agenda is as presented. First order up is public comments. I have one in person and I think we have one to read. So Hope, if you want to go ahead and start us out with public comments.
My name is Hope Jessel. I'm thankful that a tentative contract agreement has been reached. I'm thankful that our students can start school on time, and I'm thankful our teachers can enjoy the last bit of their summer with this behind them. Why did it take 397 days? Why did it take until the strike vote reached 97.5%? If the money was there August 2nd, 2022, why wasn't it there July of 2021? A North Marion teacher with a master's degree and over 20 years experience makes less than a first-year teacher in another district. How can this be so? We lost great experienced teachers because the district administration let them down. Our veteran teachers are not here because of their wage. They're here because they love this district and they're dedicated to our district. Does their loyalty and dedication mean nothing? Why wasn't anything done to retain teachers? How will you repair the relationship between the administration and the teachers? It's clear that our teachers are not valued or respected. In the area where students have the most needs, there are currently 7 open positions, 2 counselor positions, 2 special ed teaching positions, 2 special ed assistant positions, and 1 behavioral specialist position. And why do we only have 1 school psychologist for approximately 1,800 students? At the last board meeting, I asked if the community would get answers to any of the questions I asked. My questions were not answered, and only 1 board member replied to my email. My questions were valid, important, and they deserved answers. Will tonight's questions be answered? I also talked about the reputation of our school district. Are you aware that our district is regarded as a training ground for new teachers? Teachers in training, constant turnover, and a lack of experienced teachers does not equal a quality education for our students. Going forward, I know the changes that I need to make going forward. I need to stay more informed of what's happening in our district. I need to carefully educate myself when voting for school board members, and I need to continue to support students and teachers and use my voice when necessary. School board members, will you hold the administration accountable when they falter? Will you admit when you fail our students and make necessary changes? I challenge the administration and school board to look within, recognize, and acknowledge mistakes. Sadly, we can't change the past, but we can change the future. North Marion schools can be a great place for teachers and students. The district can be one that we can all be proud of, but it will take a new mindset, new priorities, and new intentions for there to be new results. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one public comment that was received via email, so I will read that out. Below is a public comment for Monday, August 8th, board meeting. Over the last year, I submitted 2 public comments to be read at different board meetings. Both were not read. The most recent comment contained questions pertaining to the gun safety situation that occurred on the high school campus at the end of the school year. I submitted my public comment the day before the June 13th, 2022 board meeting, yet it was not read. After inquiring, my comment was not read again. I was instead promised a detailed response about the safety situation from Superintendent Redlinger, yet I have not received anything. The lack of communication and transparency with the community is very disappointing, especially around the topic of safety. Rachel Marsh, parents of 2 North Marion students. Okay, moving along, board communication. Probably the only thing on board communication, several of us attended summer board conference, had really good ideas presented to us, good collaboration, good networking, good best practices. I don't know if anybody else has thoughts they want to share about that event.
I enjoyed it. I thought they came really up to speed pretty quickly for the first in-person conference in 3 years, and the quality was as high as it was pre-COVID, which was thankful and was really happy.
I appreciated that. The OSBA is seeing that parents are crucial to our partnership. I feel like they've been on the back burner for quite some time during COVID. And I was glad that that was brought to attention and the guest speaker they brought.
Yeah, I would just echo that. I had to leave early because I got COVID. But, yeah, the day that I attended, and hopefully didn't spread COVID to everybody, I know I have. I thought I echoed, you know, it was one intense day of discussing parent engagement and community engagement. And I'm sure that as we talk about our strategic plan, we can look ways to better make progress in that area.
Thank you, and thanks for everybody who attended. I know it's a time commitment to run over there for a weekend, but I enjoyed it a lot this year, and it was nice to be back in person and share. Do you have anything, Bill? Oh yeah, Richard, do you have any thoughts on it?
I think everybody covered it. I mean, it's interesting that, you know, it was the initial session, that sort of the keynote speaker that talked about the community engagement that I think we all found pretty interesting, and you know, I too, I think would like us as a board to kind of spend more time talking about what we're doing to engage our community and things that we can do to improve there. So,
Chrissy, were you online for any of it?
I did not make any of those meetings online.
Okay, don't mean to put you on the spot. I just wanted to give you an
No, that's
opportunity.
okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know, Bill, do you have anything else from Sale OSBA? Sorry.
No, it's kind of a lull in the summer.
Yeah.
They're prepping up for the November conference. I know the workshops are being determined now what it will be focused on. Some quite interesting stuff. And then I think the Legislative Policy Committee is good to gear up in September. And then the LC will start creating legislative laws starting in September.
I was just gonna do a follow-up. Did you hear any more back about the rural caucus? Or is that
It's
still?
underway, and they asked me to be a consultant, so I said happily that I would, and that's where it stands right now. So
Okay,
I think that group
I was
is
just
just
curious.
starting to meet. Right.
Awesome.
I gave at the roundtable discussions what I wanted the definition of rural to be, so that North Marion would be included. And, I was chuckled. It brought some tears of laughter. You know, I'm still fighting for the rules to make sure that North Marion is considered a rural
All right,
district.
I was curious, just.
Yeah.
Y'all be interested to follow up on that too, because
Yeah.
that's actually something
Right.
that I was very interested in was
Mhm.
having as part of that conference. So.
Yeah.
Next order is board retreat. I don't know when everybody's schedule frees up in September. Obviously between now and Labor Day weekend, I'm sure everybody's busy, but I'm not sure if there's a date that we can come to now, or if I should just send out an email and have you guys chime in. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe throw out a couple of dates, via email, and have you guys chime in as to what can and can't work, so. We'll be looking for that. We have 2 new faces here, so new Director of Teaching and Learning, Desiree, so
Not
new,
so
maybe
new.
not so new, do you want to come up and introduce yourself?
I would like to have the pleasure of introducing Desmond Keisel. I used to work with her a few years ago, and it's really nice to have her back as the director of teaching.
Am I supposed to say something? All right. Well, as I was walking in actually, and I saw you all sit down, I realized like I had 4 of your children, like all of you, when I was at the middle school. So that sense of returning home is profound to me right now, especially since I still have kids who are in this district and they're proud Huskies. So I'm really excited to be back. We had an opportunity to work as a team this last week, and it was really great to see the admin team that you have and how much they care about kids and the focus of teaching and learning. So I'm excited to come and learn again, because while there's lots of things I recognize, there's a lot of things I don't, because I've been gone for a little bit. And it will be exciting to see where we can take the district next.
Great, well, welcome aboard.
Nice to have you
FYI,
back, Desiree.
Thank you.
Anthony Medina gave me an earful at dinner for taking one of the.
Oh.
Definitely let me aware of that.
Well, I will take that as a compliment. Yeah, thank you, Heidi. I appreciate it. I'm really excited to be back. Thank you.
And then from the middle school, we have Lindsay, if you want to introduce, bring her up.
Yeah, I'll just, come on, I'm gonna bring it on up. There we go. So I am thrilled to introduce my new vice principal, Lindsay Android Koberstein. Is that right? I remember to hear.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited about working as an admin. I was a teacher at Central Lake, so very similar kind of rural district, smaller than here, but kind of similar demographic. And I've been working with Tammy just for a few days. I haven't been back long, but every experience I've had has been amazing so far. I love this district. It's been so welcoming from the day I interviewed to today. Just everybody's been so positive and kind and helpful, and I'm just really excited to get to know everybody.
Good, well, welcome aboard, and thank you. All right, moving along to number 3, a consent agenda. Everybody's had a chance to look over that. I would entertain a motion.
Move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
A motion is second. Any discussion?
I have a question on the consent agenda.
Sure.
On the personnel thing, can you tell us where we are in our staffing levels?
Oh, we're close to nearly all the positions filled. We have a few that are open, that are being interviewed for right now, but we're real close.
Any other discussion? And then we'll move to a vote. Bill?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Crystal?
Aye.
Ricardo?
Aye.
Christie?
Aye.
Aye.
And chair votes for. That motion carries. Thank you. Board action. We have an OSB Board of Directors nomination for position 12. Not sure if somebody wants to. Is that the legal language we need to use to
Yes.
make this happen?
So just a reminder for everybody that I got appointed when Melissa Groff left Jefferson and moved to Southern Oregon. That position opened and I was appointed. So that's why I don't have a full term. So I'm in the election for this year, and the nomination is required to be nominated by the board to be in the election for our Marion region, Marion County, so 11 districts in Marion, to be in the vote for if I can stay on the board. So I would like to stay on the board, so I would appreciate that.
I'll nominate Bill Groff for the position for OSBA Board of Directors nomination for position 12. Whereas the North Marion School District 15 is a member of the Oregon School Boards Association, now therefore be it resolved, the North Marion School District 15 nominates Bill Groff for the OSBA Board of Directors position 12.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Bill?
Weird way, yeah.
Richard?
Aye.
Crystal?
Aye.
Ricardo?
Aye.
Christie?
Aye.
Katie?
Aye.
And chair votes for. Get another.
Well, I mean,
Another meeting in your
yeah,
schedule.
No, I'm nominated, so
Yeah, I was
now
gonna
the
say.
Marion region will vote in November. Will be.
Does that happen during OSBA convention or is that,
I
that's
think
right
so.
before, isn't it?
I think it's during the convention, not 100% sure.
Well, good luck. Moving along, I'll pass it over to Ginger for a superintendent report.
Okay, well, just basically over the summer, we're revamping things that are required and things that need to be worked on. Like going back to the Rachel's comment, we've been working on the security protocols and we need to improve and then revamping them. We're going to train staff on those items when they return to work. And then we'll update the website and information that could be public will be public and things that are confidential will remain that way. As we know with safety plans, you don't tell everyone everything because then you're not safe anymore. So we have to be delicate about what we share and not share, but we'll make sure that that information is out there. The second thing that we have to update are the protocols, the communicable disease plan, which COVID used to have its own section and now it's moved into the communicable disease plan. So we need to revamp that plan and we're currently working on it. Bill's doing some work on that right now. And that's a process that we come up with the plan, we put it on the website, we take feedback from people, we ask staff to take a look at it. And it's due at the end of this month or before school starts. So look for more information about that. One of the main differences now is the things that were really contentious last time. The masking is still a local decision based on whether or not there's an issue or concern. If you have a certain percentage of absences, all of a sudden, do you have to take additional precautions? I think there's a threshold of 10% take notice. If it hits 30% low, so those kinds of thresholds are still there. They were in the plan before, they still remain. You still have to have protocols for what to do when someone has symptoms. It used to be in the past that if you were exposed, you had to leave or stay in isolation. That's not the case anymore. It's if you are exhibiting symptoms. And then even then, it's within the communicable disease plan, what kind of symptoms do you have and what would those requirements be? So we don't foresee with COVID, Seidlinger presented today that the BA.5 infection spike has leveled off and it's going down. So we don't foresee anything happening on a large scale having to do with the BA.5 variant, nor is there another variant on the horizon. So we feel like with the plans in place and that will be articulated, that all of the things that we're doing that we must continue to do, watching the hand washing, the cleaning and disinfecting, physical distancing, watching for cohorts of students, making COVID-19 tests available, screening for symptoms, and then asking students when they're exhibiting symptoms to, when you're sick, don't come to school, same thing with work. If you're sick, don't come to work. And again, the two big preventive tools are face coverings when needed, and if staff option, it's not going to be a requirement. And then vaccinations are not required by us. If you want the exception, religious or medical, that is still available for employees. The volunteers, we want to see more volunteers come back. There was a lot of confusion about volunteer rules. And I have two different documents that show different language about them. But locally, the superintendents, we haven't had a chance to talk to Joe Morlock yet, but the local superintendents are all going to use the same protocols and procedures for that. We are required to make sure that we, with our due diligence, offer some level of protection for people who are volunteers that are not vaccinated for whatever reason, to be protected. So when those volunteers are here, we will make sure they're not around medically fragile children, or that they're not around children who may also not be vaccinated and they may be exposed, so we have to prevent exposure. And we are also going to ask that if you want to volunteer and you're not vaccinated, that you take a COVID test prior to being a volunteer. So you come in 30 minutes early, you take a COVID test. If it's negative, then you go ahead and volunteer. And that will be a weekly thing. And then that way people can come in and volunteer. And then we know when they cross that threshold after they had their COVID test and they're negative, that we don't have to be as concerned about their safety or other people's safety. So protecting students and staff and having volunteers. So that's the plan. And this, like I said, we have a couple weeks to put it all together. Bill's putting all that information down. Will be available soon for people to see. The other things that OHA is asking us to do, so, and I will consult with Agnes on this. Agnes doesn't return until another 2 weeks. They would like us to provide more training in public health education, and we'll have to find a way in which we can make that information available to. But it's not something we can actively go out and say, hey, I want to give you more training on this. So anyway, so that's the challenge. It's very similar to the template that we used last year. And I will be sending a document out to you. The template is, it looks very similar, but it's much more streamlined. It's easy for us to use, and we should be able to put that together pretty quickly. Each building will have its own plan, and just like we did last year. So, so basically that's it. Any questions?
Just that, is this required by ODE or this is advisory? Because I've seen conflicting reports.
To have the communicable disease plan.
No, the ready safe.
Yeah,
learning.
it's required.
So is the volunteer program included in that? Is that part
Yes.
of Ready Safe?
Yeah.
So I have a couple questions.
Yes.
Would every volunteer have to test or just unvaccinated volunteers?
I would prefer if every volunteer is right now. There's so many variants going on that I'm not fearful necessarily, but I want my staff to be assured that the volunteers that test, that come into the building, if they're vaccinated, I'm not concerned about it. I'm going to invite them as a volunteer to take the test, so everyone knows they have been exposed. Kind of like, someone in your situation went to a conference, you didn't know about it. So it's the same kind of thing. So,
But I mean, I'd also been vaccinated and boosted, and so I guess my question is,
Yeah.
because I'm becoming of the mindset that I think the vaccination helps you when you get it, but I don't think it keeps you from getting it.
Right.
And so I feel like I don't know what the point is in making people test, especially if we're not going to test all of our staff every week. Why would volunteers make a difference?
we will, if now staff is something that's totally different. Staff, I can have requirements and things. But I can't do that with that. I mean, I can set up expectations for volunteers. Yeah. And if you, according to these rules, we can exceed the expectation. If you want every staff member to test every week, we can set that expectation. I don't recommend it. I don't think it's necessary.
Are we tracking students' vaccination status?
Well, if they do not want to take tests at school to show that they're not vaccinated. We did that last year. We did a test to stay program as well. We don't do that anymore.
Can you say that last bit again, Ginger? I didn't hear you.
We don't do the test to stay program. That's no longer part of the communicable disease plan. It's all about symptoms now. The test to stay program was for students who were exposed in the past,
Mhm.
that they could remain in school. And that has gone away.
So I didn't hear your answer to Heidi's question either about tracking vaccination status for students. I didn't hear what you said. Sorry.
We did that last year only in connection with the test to stay program.
Okay. Okay. Got it. I have another question, Heidi, if you were done.
Thank you.
Okay. Ginger, I didn't hear exactly what you said either about, you said something about there's more requirements for education and training around this.
The Oregon Health Authority would like us to provide more information to the public about public health. The
Yep.
question of our capacity to provide that service is in question.
Mhm.
I'm more inclined to provide resources for people to access on their own, but I don't know that we can actually provide that education program. We do some of that in our health classes with students and with our parents when we engage them in understanding what our health curriculum is. But this goes a little bit beyond that. But
it would-
we'll make it.
And that would be, they haven't like given you examples or resources to do that. It's just, we would like you to do this. Is that-
They have, fortunately, with this release of the new plan that we're supposed to, our updated, ready for school, ready to return to school plan for this year. They have provided links and two resources that we could use. And those would be the links that we would share with our community.
Okay, thanks. I haven't looked for those yet, but I will.
I will post all this information for everyone to see as we're putting the plan together, so they can look at it too. And it's all public information now.
Any other questions?
Craft the school volunteer, how would that work?
If you're working with students, you should follow the same rules. It would be the same thing like a coach. But you're volunteering, you're spending time with students. So that would also apply.
So one thing is, so they're not calling it Ready Safe Schools anymore, right?
No.
So can you give us the documentation, or can you email me the documentation from ODE and OHA that says it's required?
Absolutely.
And then the other thing is, have you thought about, for the resources for public health, pulling in like a partnership with one of the local hospitals for the check?
Yes,
Community Health Education Center?
yes, that was one of the recommendations.
Mhm.
And that's something I'm gonna have Agnes do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know last time they were working with Staten, which is so far away. So hopefully we can get a more local.
Yeah, they were the statement, was the location in which the services available to rural schools. It seemed like there was if you have a smaller school district in Staten, work with
I think
you.
that's how their time is divided.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, there's no other questions on that. Thank you for the update. Um,
Can I go one else, the next Ginger question?
Sure, yeah.
Just a status on, Willamette Career Academy is ready to roll again this year.
Yes.
We've got
Great.
kids, we're gonna have fully loaded.
Yep.
It's gonna be great again.
Yep.
Nice.
Deanne, would you like to add anything about Willamette Career Academy?
Yeah, we are gonna have a representative from the Career Academy come down during registration for the juniors and seniors to market it again. We have a couple spots that are still open, that's what we're really pushing hard. And so they'll be here to answer any questions. They are gonna have an open house down there. So we're really trying to keep the door open to get more kids involved.
Same program as last year, or did they
Two
add
new ones,
cosmetology is open?
cosmetology, health sciences, diesel mechanic, computer science, construction.
Okay, but that covers everything they started with when they first started
Yeah.
construction. Okay,
Those are the two ones.
cool.
There's two new ones.
Technology, construction.
That's the third one.
That's okay. I can look it up.
Let's say, is it automation or something? Or something mechanical?
It's something manufacturing.
There we go.
Thanks.
That's good.
I think that's really important.
And for people that don't know about the Willamette Career Academy, it is a value-added program to our career technical education offering for our students to be able to engage in learning things that we can't offer here, because every high school only has capacity for a few programs. They can't offer everything. But that doesn't mean a student can't find it somewhere else. So we have a partnership through the Willamette ESD for the schools in this region to be able to access the Willamette Career Academy. And as we know, career technical education students have the highest graduation rate in the state of any group. So the more we encourage students to explore their careers, the more relevant their education becomes to them, and they're more likely to be successful not only in school, but in post-high school. So it's a great program. It was a good decision by the board and everyone to get involved.
Love it.
It's only like for seniors or?
Juniors and seniors. We try to get juniors first because it's a 2-year commitment. So they'll be walking out, like cosmetology, they could be walking out ready to cut hair. They just have to take the test.
So they get a diploma and a license, or how they have to go through the state to get the license? How does that work?
Yeah, they have to go to the state to get the license. And the diesel, they have to go to Schenectady for another year to get their license. So it gives them a jump start to get the better certificate and license. But we try to target the juniors because it is a 2-year. We had some seniors in it this year, and so it kept their interest into like diesel, then they're continuing the program at Schenectady. So it's just because we have some slots still open, we are addressing both juniors and seniors, so we can fill those slots. We have cosmetology and health sciences are full. We have a waiting list on cosmetology.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
other discussion?
Thanks.
Richard or Christy, any more questions?
Very true.
So with that, I guess we will move on to item 6, which is our work session, probably a little bit different format, less structured. But I think we're gonna have to do some presenting on our strategic plan.
So however you want to organize it.
Well, I just need to be able to see that. I think. I sent a link to the to PowerPoint beyond. So thank you. I did wear my accessorized glasses to go along with it. These are again drafty.
Yeah.
Whoops. Thank you, Diane.
Oh, thanks.
Christie, in the past, those plans have been a requirement to actually get your ESSER funds. They kind of use that as the connection.
Oh, I was talking about when I sat with Bill and he said they were gonna be advisory and not required.
Oh, there may be aspects of the, aspects
I'll follow up on it.
of the plan, but the plan is required. We don't have to, Linda, hit slideshow, but you could put it on the slideshow if you'd like. A little larger view. Okay.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Bill? I'm having a hard time hearing tonight.
Oh, okay. I was just saying that you could put it on slideshow if we wanted a little larger, larger view.
Well, if I knew how. But maybe I can just make it bigger and move it.
Oh, okay. No, it's okay. You can leave it the other way. It'll be fine. It's readable and we've got it in front of us too, so it'll be fine.
Sorry, just to interrupt. Are we still streaming okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. I didn't mean
Yeah,
to-
that was what we were trying to troubleshoot this afternoon.
Yeah.
Had to do both. Had to do both. So, well, thanks for the opportunity to be here. Welcome back. Happy August. And we've been back for a couple of weeks now, having some opportunities to think about this, and we're excited about it. And so you kind of see that opening slide leads with our mission statement now. And it is one of those things that we hope kind of becomes embedded and integrated with most of our language. So North Marion, learning together to cultivate lifelong growth. And hopefully we're in that mode tonight. One of the things that I'd noted here that we've talked about building a culture of warm demand. And being a warm demander is a notion of an individual oftentimes associated with teachers who, because of the relationships they have with students, are able to ask them to do a little bit more, and the students are excited to do a little more and go a little farther for them because of the relationship that they've built with them, because of the trust that the student has in the teacher, because of the care, the understanding of the care the teacher has for the student. So we think about this, and this comes from, this notion of warm demander comes from Zaretta Hammond, who is a person who synthesized some research that we intend to use to kind of guide our continued learning and understanding around culturally responsive practices. And so we have left you a gift at your seat, so that you have Zaretta Hammond's book, which is really a synthesis of the great thinking of a lot of people. And we'll use that to organize our thinking about culturally responsive practice, which you've seen embedded in the goals and in the culture of the strategic plan. Last spring, we had an opportunity to work through the work that we had done up to that point. So I won't spend a lot of time kind of rethinking about that, but the mission, vision, values, and goals that had been developed up to that point really create the context for our work. And hopefully you can appreciate the work that you've done and the leadership you've shown by actually asking the superintendent to go through this process and to establish this plan. What it really does is it gives you an opportunity to organize, to do the work. And hopefully you'll see that how we've started to roll it forward. You really create through strategic planning a system of schools and a school system, that you've probably seen all the charts about arrows getting lined up together to move in the same direction versus the arrows pointing in all different directions. And a strategic plan really gives you a chance to align the work, to coordinate the work, to build a school system where you may have had a system of schools. And we saw that in a lot of the feedback that we got in our surveys, was that, dang, we're kind of a small campus here. We're pretty close. we'd like to see more alignment, more connection, more collaboration amongst the schools throughout our programs. So hopefully you'll see a little bit about how we're starting to evolve in that direction and how that can play out in the future. So again, you recall there was initially a core planning team who, under the facilitation of Jerry Colonna, worked us through the first part of our strategic planning process. Do this. Oh, I'm moving, but Linda, I'm forgetting to tell you to move along with that. So you move next slide. And the next slide. So the first pass, oh, I actually changed mine. So I can see that ours aren't quite lined up, so I'm going to follow this one. The district mission statement, was developed after some great conversation, great process, and great making sense of the feedback that we got from our school community and with the great thinking of the staff that we had and community members that we had in our core plan. North Marion, learning together to cultivate lifelong growth. And it took us a long time to get down to the 8 words that you see there. A district vision, beyond that initial purpose for the organization, helps us to start to think about what it looks like when we're doing the work that's moving us towards a vision. And ultimately, we would envision seeing communities engaged and unified in providing all students equitable access to their chosen paths. Again, a lot of meaning behind each word for the group and those that crafted that. A lot of what we'll be doing over the time that we start to come back to school is kind of making an organizational sense out of that. Okay, Linda. The district core values, again, a lot of process to really think about, what are those aspects of our community that can be our common ground, our common way of being, the way we want to behave and how we want to work together and treat each other as we actually implement our strategic plan. So our core values around community and innovation and learning, diversity, high expectations, and the responsibility or accountability with the language and the values that came through from the core planning team. Again, these are aspects of the plan that we presented last June. We had shared some drafts of the goal concepts at the end of that session in June. And go ahead, Linda. The goals that you see here were the next phase of those drafts. As you remember, the goal concepts were presented, but we were just getting ready to meet with an implementation team who were going to refine those goals a little bit and then develop performance indicators and measures to help us stay on track and monitor those goals. So these were the goal areas that had been developed. And then if you'll go ahead, Linda. This was the district implementation team and the action teams that actually met twice. We spent 6 or 8 hours the first day, shortly after our last board meeting, and when the presentation happened, and then we met again kind of to finish thinking through the goal statements, the performance indicators, and the measures. So those are some of the aspects that have been developed and have been begun to be processed by administrators since we've been there. So we kind of move into what those performance indicators are underneath those goals, as developed by the implementation and action team. And I was a high school biology teacher, so Gary Larson and the far side, he was a behavioral biologist. We always enjoyed using some of these far sides, but the notion of making sure that if you're working really hard, you're working on the right thing, you're working on something that might actually get the results that you intended for all of that hard work. And the performance indicators and measures are really our guideposts, our better guards. They keep us focused on the right work. And they're what we check and we use to make sure that our district and building work plans are in line with those goals and are apt to accomplish what we intend to accomplish. And there are also the aspects of the work that the board will get a regular progress reports on. So these next parts take a look at those strategic planning goals. And we might just take a moment. Implement rigorous and aligned pre-K-12 curriculum standards, instruction, and materials that are culturally responsive. Okay, and again, the goal has some broadness to it. As we start to look at the performance indicators and the measures, it starts to further define those goals. Empower each student to develop skills across the curriculum in ways that build their confidence to challenge themselves. And again, we can imagine a lot of the feedback that we got about how we empower students, develop their competence, raise expectations, raise rigor, are embedded in that goal and the work that it comes. And then develop systems. Oops, one more, please. One more back. Thank you. Develop systems to expand the percentage of staff who are skilled in the use of culturally responsive practices that reflect the demographics of our community. So there are a couple of ends of that. There's continuing to develop our own cultural competency and our ability to embed culturally responsive practices into our work. And there's also kind of looking outside. We're looking at our recruitment, our hiring, our retention policies to continue to attract staff that reflect the demographics of our community. So our kids in our community continue to see themselves, hear themselves in our staff. And that was important, and especially important from the voices of our students during the strategic planning process. So those were the goals. Okay, thanks, Linda. And so you start to see there, under each goal are 3 performance indicators. Under each performance indicator are 3 measures. So in this presentation, I'm just sharing the performance indicators with you. And what I don't think I'll do is, to necessarily read each performance indicator to you. You have that there, and you also have the measures in a nice format in the document in the draft document that we just shared. But I'm sharing a little bit about the organization. You can see how collectively the performance indicators further define, what the work, towards accomplishing that goal might be. You'll see a little bit of overlap and integration amongst the performance indicators, and you'll see some overlap and integration amongst the measures and the goals in the strategic plan. And that's a good thing, because in a strategic plan, there is this notion that, we really are being strategic. We're doing the things that we believe will lead us towards our mission, and we're trying to prune other things, out of our activities so that we can focus on what is most important. And the notion is that it actually takes all of the goals that we've established. It takes all of the work, working together to actually accomplish the goal or the mission of the school district. In essence, in strategic planning, there's the notion that if you do one really well, that's okay, but that's not going to get you to your mission. We really need to do each of these really well because they support each other, they build on each other, and they work together. So thank you, Linda. I might just stop right there right now because that's that's the basic organization, and the update work that has been done and how it's organized. What's really important is that there is a nice organization for the district to develop a work plan around that, and there is an organization for buildings to create and departments to create building and department work plans that can actually support that. So let me just stop there and I'll share a little bit about what that looks like as we're rolling that out.
So when do we ask questions?
I was going to pause right here for
Okay.
some questions and then I move a little bit more.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Mhm.
So I did actually study this before I came in, and so I just had some views that I wrote down. So on page 3, in the superintendent's message, we formed a core planning team with broad representation from our diverse school community. I just still want to point out what I pointed out earlier. There's 24 people listed, 4 are unpaid, 2 were students, and 18 were paid staff. So I'm not sure that accurately reflects a diverse school community, since the majority of them were paid staff. On page 9, we have an acronym of DSPT, which I think is pretty relevant for most of us, but if we're sending this out to community, we don't actually anywhere else use that I notice. Oh, it's on page 8 too. We never call out that we're going to start referring to it that way. So I just want to make sure that that's clear for people who may be reading this document. And just overall, a lot of this language is going to be over the general population. So like when you're doing journalism and stuff to the population. So goal number 1 doesn't actually identify or speak about like the students, the performance indicators. These goals seem really wonderful, but most of these goals are directed at only towards our staff instead of like the impact for the students. It doesn't really call out any actual data points or metrics. It just says that we're going to have instructional framework, professional learning teams used a lot. It talks about professional learning plan. Some of the glaring things that are missing are the students, the families, how we're going to connect to the families, how family engagement is going to be involved. I read down here under goal 2, the measurements, again, professional learning systems, framework for common growth mindset. It talks about how teachers are going to be establishing that. Tools are developed for assessing and recognizing growth mindset. I'm not seeing where the students are like actively involved in the strategic plan goals and how they're used as an indicator, because they are the reason why we have schools. That was the piece I was like really looking for. I only see parent engagement once under performance indicator 3A. So that's my feedback.
I think, you know, again, this is a reasonably high level, and in essence, we're trying to create a structure to support leaders, to support teachers, to support students. Maybe you'll see it in this, maybe not. Crystal, I'm not sure if you'll see it, but this is all in the service of trying to cause student learning and students' feelings of inclusion and students' feeling of, you know, being a part of the school. So you know, there are different ways, I think, maybe of looking at the language and the pieces, maybe as we kind of start to move towards this, but everything here is in the service of empowering students.
I guess from like a family point of view, family engagement and student is not mentioned in here enough.
So they're in the ultimately in the work plans, and
Yeah.
very, very noted, you know, but we're not necessarily at that particular level. So in building work plans, there will have to be family engagement, there will have to be aspects of that in the building work plans and strategies around that in the building work plans. And I mean, I agree with you, it's not here, but there is the notion that in order to cause that to happen, what we're working with leaders on is kind of thinking about developing theories of action about how what you do could act might and how you think that will cause the results that you'd like to have. And I can tell you, that in the work with building administrators, the notion of family engagement, community engagement, is mentioned as a key strategy in each of their, pieces of thinking about how to move this forward.
I'm just having a hard time being able to sell this to families when they're not a priority in the document. Because that's who we really need on board as well.
Well, their children are the priorities.
Right.
So I'm, like I said,
Yeah,
it's not my plan.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I know. I'm just saying, you asked for feedback.
I think the plan is in essence how to create the aligned work plans in the district to cause those things to happen. So I think that's, that is what at least is evident to me, but I'm just one person thinking about it.
I guess I read it differently, although I'm appreciating the points being made here, but I read it with the bias of what I was reading, not what I was looking for. And so to me, it came out as these set of strategic plans are how the district is going to operate with its core values, push down at a high level in what its goals are, but more, I look at student outcome goals and maybe even family engagement, which is where I'm struggling with your comment to try to understand how I was looking at that as board goals. This is what the board demands as goals for student outcome measured metrics, like state test, things like that. That's what the board is going to be demanding of our district, whereas this was more about core values of the pedagogy of delivering education and operating the school district with full DEI lens engaged. And that we need to set our own board goals for what we want student outcomes to be, right? And what we expect our district to perform. That's how I took it. I didn't go into it that way. That's just how, as I was reading it, started segregating the task in my mind. Right? So that's just how I took it.
So maybe on page 3, we don't say Dear North Marion community. Because I mean, we're saying this is a community document, but we're really have it focused at a school district.
And there were some great points made in our pre-conference workshop, like that, on how we address even our signs, how our signs address our community, that I really took to heart and see what we could radically improve, and maybe every district, not just ours. But how to deliver that home, and for those, you weren't there at the board conference, right? You weren't there at the OSBA conference, but like one example was, which I kind of chuckled at because I remember it so fondly, was the yellow folder, and that the concept of what the presenter was saying, talking to the audience now, was that the number one influencer in a child's education is the adult at home in their life, be it a parent, a guardian, or whatever. That is the number one influencer. And if you're not collaborating with that influencer, you're not touching the largest part of education what this child is receiving. You're augmenting on a side path. And, and so his idea of like how to improve the yellow folder was great, but that's building, I would expect the building to do that because we don't do yellow folders at the high school. So, so how the building engages with family needs to improve dramatically, but it's going to be different at the elementary than it's going to be at the secondary. Right.
So is this strategic plan going out to the population? Are we not doing
It's
it?
our core values, so I would hope so, but I'm not 100% sure.
Because that's what I'm getting at, like,
Yeah, the highest level part, and like I said, I think there is the notion of doing the work. The notion of culturally responsiveness is all about working with community and families, and knowing and engaging and those kinds of things. In a few minutes, I can't necessarily capture all of that, but that is, when you see that word over and over and over again in the goals of the strategic plan, and then ultimately in the strategies of the strategic plan as we move forward, you can't be culturally responsive without doing what you're describing. And so some of it is kind of getting into that work, and seeing, how that actually plays out in a different way than it's been done before.
but we're not actually documenting it in our metrics, and that was my concern.
Yeah.
So
well,
I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
and I hear that, and I'm sure it will happen, but if this document is going out to everyone and we don't have that clearly listed as a priority, I think we're doing a disservice to ourselves.
Yeah, I
Does
think
that make sense?
Yeah, typically with strategic plans, it's the highest level. It's the highest level aspects of the strategic plan that generally get shared most broadly. And then the other pieces, the performance indicators and and measures and those types of things are internal accountability systems. I think we'll eventually craft, because we do have to create some tools. Right now, even the assessment system that we know doesn't work anymore. You know what I mean? Otherwise, we would have shared a few things in there about student performance and things like that in typical areas, but we don't have we actually don't have the assessments right now to give us that kind of information. They will come back, and those I in that document, or in our building plans, I put the performance indicators in there where we would normally say, by June 30th, then these things will happen. By June, these things will happen with graduation rate, attendance, and behavior, and some of those other types of things that we more typically measure.
I guess what I don't want to happen is that we have these, we vote on this, and then we wait for that additional information to come, and it never comes.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that a lot since I've been sitting on this side. And that's where I'm struggling with this document.
Yeah, well, there's a little chicken or the egg, because getting the systems in place, to be able to give you the kind of pieces that the kind of feedback and measures and accountability, that you're asking for, has to come before those things will actually mean anything, because we want them to measure what we're doing, not just random which kids show up where and some of those kinds of things. So what this plan does, and maybe you'll see a little bit, there's a little bit of faith, but actually measured measured faith, what I mean, that as we roll this out, we actually do a really good job in getting you the kind of information that you want. And it's not lost on us what you're asking, and it's important to us too. But we want it to be, we want the measurement system to actually give information about what we're doing. That there's a cause and effect between between the measure, and the work that we're doing. Not that it's just luck or whatever it is.
Well, and I think a component of that is going to be transparency within the community, where we sharing our success or failures of the strategic goals with the community. Because you can send out this document, if there is nowhere that they can validate that this is happening, then it goes in the same pile of recycling that everything else has.
One of the things that I think you'll see happen over time is that we can have a strategic plan, and we can be working on the work of the strategic plan with our community and with each others. We don't it might sound different and look different, but we know, you know what I mean? We know what's being addressed there, dependent upon the audience that we're working with. You know, it might sound and look different with our students than it does with families and those types of things. But the key is that we actually know where we're going. And then we use kind of multiple ways to get there, just like great teachers do. You know, they have multiple strategies depending upon what's happening in the classroom at any time. We have multiple strategies to get there, as long as we know where we're going.
Richard or Christy, do either of you have comments? I want to give everybody an opportunity to chime in if they wanted to.
Yeah, I
Go
do.
ahead.
I have a comment and a question. Richard, do you want to go first, though? Mine might be lengthy.
Oh, thanks, Chrissy. Yeah, I guess maybe I am struggling a little bit because I want to give Dr. Rhodes an opportunity to finish his, presentation and just sort of review what remains there at kind of a high level before we start talking about, specific language in the draft. And so maybe just a question of kind of process, I'm assuming that there will be an opportunity for us to all, weigh in with specific edits or red lines in the report itself. Not sure if tonight is the night that we're hoping to gather that information. So just a clarifying question there. And then, but I did want to agree with, I think, Dr. Rhodes' view of kind of how this comes together, in that, we really need to sort of align on the high level strategic plan, mission, vision, strategic goals. And then, I expect what will come after that is, a more detailed discussion about, specific sort of objectives and tactics and how we want to measure, our success there, and then developing the systems that will actually, deliver the information that we need to measure the things that we think are important to measure. And I also, I think, would like to see some metrics identified there. And I think those metrics are really, in my mind, necessary to keep us accountable as a board, but also to keep our administration and our faculty accountable for, delivering on the results that we're hoping to achieve through this strategic plan. So just my thoughts.
So I would agree with Richard about the metrics, but and not only does it keep everybody accountable, but I feel like if we're really clear on what metrics we're expecting to see, then it's going to save workload down the road, so that in 4 months, we don't get the first report and say, oh, those aren't the metrics that I was expecting to see, go back and do it again. Right. So I maybe the second part of your talk will address that. I'm not sure.
Maybe not. I think what you'll notice in the first metrics are, that you see, the first measures that are there are evidence of implementation. And without evidence of implementation of the plan, you can't actually say that some result you got later was caused by doing the plan, or not. So with all of us, when we're actually developing school improvement plans, we like to connect evidence of implementation with the actual metrics. We do that in classrooms all the time.
Sure.
We put a program in or something like that, and then we measure, we look at the student outcomes at the end, but we don't have any evidence that anything changed in the classroom or not. It may have just been luck, or which kids were there, or something like that. So we also want to make sure that if we said we're going to do something, that we have evidence that we were actually doing it. So you're right about that. And I'm an assessment person, and nothing makes me crazier than not using data well, or not, or not using data for the purpose that it was for, or not setting up useful opportunities to use measurement. Because in schools we like to say we're data driven, but we do all kinds of crazy things with the data. And so I would like to make sure that there's validity behind piece of data that we put in front of ourselves, or in front of the board or the community.
Yeah, so I guess to be very specific, if we look at goal 3 and we have performance indicators, A, B, and C, and then underneath those, we have measures, right? I would expect from metric reporting that for each of those listed measures, there would be some sort of data point reported to the board on that as appropriate. So performance indicator 3A, measure 1, I want to see what is the plan for that and how has it been implemented, you know, numbers, dates, all of that kind of stuff. So that would be like what my expectation is. And so, but somebody else could read this completely differently. And so, you know, the bit I'm struggling with a little bit is, should we not be on the same page of what I read as a metric and what you would think is a metric? And then we go back and start to get these reports on what we're doing. I understand that how much work it is to track these data points and come back and keep reporting on it and all that. And it would be better if we're on the same page to begin with, I think. And in reference specifically to goal 3, to me, when I read it, sounded great. And then when I look at the indicators and measures, it seems like it's mostly focused on hiring new staff, as opposed to integrating and also augmenting the existing staff with new skills if they need them. And so I don't think I see that as a focus of what if our existing staff need to be more skilled in culturally responsive practices. I don't see that addressed anywhere in any of these parts. It to me looks like we just want to hire new staff, which I mean, we do need new bodies for some positions, but there's a disconnect between there for the goal and then the measures to me.
And I don't disagree with you with the observation you just made, Christy. And remember, I talked with the integration, you know, of the 3 goals. You know, what you do see is that happening, you know, in other aspects of the goal. And in fact, as you see some of the building work plans, you might actually see what you're describing as being strategies and activities under that goal.
Okay, but if it's not in a performance indicator and it's not in a measure, then I'm theoretically not going to get any metrics or reporting on that. And so I see that as a major flaw with this goal that needs some tweaking a little bit, because I am interested in that. I think it's important.
I agree, Christy. I am struggling with no hard dates and metrics that we'll receive.
Well, I can see what you're saying, Bill. This is a very high level view of a process. Whereas, you know, at what point are those metrics and measurability standards developed? Where does that, what part of the process are you doing that in?
Yeah, I think you might have to, these are not, you know, there aren't tools out there that you just go out and grab. So these initial reports will be, and I'm number driven. People are number driven. So they're going to look for, you know, as much quantitative information as we can give. So there are aspects that are more qualitative, you know, in some of the measures that are there. But most of those measures would be easy enough to create numbers around. You know, the bilingual teacher pathway, how many staff members do we have enrolled, you know what I mean? Or, you know, in the queue for the bilingual teacher pathway program, and you know what I mean? And like you said, dates and steps, those are reports, you know, that we know actually make sense when we give them. We want those for ourselves because we also want to see not just whether we're doing it, but whether we're getting better at it as we're doing it.
Okay, so that's a good example. You talked about the bilingual dual immersion. Is that what you're talking about?
No, the bilingual teacher pathway program is an opportunity to kind of grow some of our own teachers.
Well, okay, well, then let me turn it around. Let's say, and we have said this, that we would like to look at a dual immersion program.
Mhm.
I think that's what we've said. right?
Yeah.
And so where would that fit into part of this plan, and at what level does that fit in?
Mhm. Well, you're exactly, I'll go back to say, Christy, you can't even start to think about developing a dual immersion program unless you have bilingual staff, to start to grow it with. And you need to start that process years before you actually can start the program. Because in any given year, we just don't have access to that many bilingual staff. So that's actually a good example of why, starting to make those kinds of hires and those kinds of shifts are important.
So I guess this is frustrating for us as a board, because we have wanted to make that a priority. And it's kind of, we keep hearing, well, this is gonna be years down the road, and we're wondering, so what year are we in? I mean, where are we then on that path? And that's not really part of the strategic plan process, but I guess I'm trying to show you.
But it is, but that is.
Where our frustrations are coming from on the board. This year, we really didn't get any data, because there was no
None.
testing, or there was no, whatever there was, we didn't see anything. So I think that's where our frustrations are coming from.
I would add that the strategic plan actually aligns with your vision. And as the board level with the policy, you're setting the direction of the vision. And then we are trying to take that vision and build it into what the students have said, what the community surveys have said, what the SIA surveys have said, what the students have told us directly they want, which aligns exactly with the things that your vision for the future holds. And for that to happen, there has to be a methodical process of building a foundation for it to launch, for it to grow, and for it to blossom. And the two things, that the perfect example is the goal 1 of increasing the number of staff who are capable of teaching in that way, and goal 2, which is creating culturally, the rest of our staff, all of our staff, engaging in deep learning about culturally responsive practices. That says that we value all of the staff. We want them to be really good at helping us build that foundation. We're looking for a division, and it's exactly what the students want too. That's what they told us that they really want. And it's where those two, goal 1 and goal 2, come together. We support our staff, and when we have openings, and if we're able to fill those positions with people that help us forward the goal, great. And if not, we've got a body of staff that have proficiency in culturally relevant practices with our families to make us successful and growing, continue to grow our community. So that's how it all comes together. And how we measure that in a way that matches, it's hard to find that alignment, but we will when we dig into it, we will find it.
And in here too, and this is, like I said, it's really important, that the notion of retaining staff. So if we're recruiting bicultural, bilingual, and multicultural, multilingual staff into communities of schools where there are not very many like them, it's also really important that we're also building a culture that makes them want to stay, that makes them feel included and want to stay. And that's also embedded in, amongst the goals of the plan. And again, that's why this notion of culturally responsive work and practice is important, and is important to the plan. And it just does take time. You have to start somewhere, with that work, but it does take time to build those cultures in programs.
So I just want to reiterate that I think both you and Ginger touched on having staff, existing staff. And goal number 3, who we're supposed to be expanding the percentage of staff who are skilled in that. But we have already existing staff and we can't just go out and hire a whole new staff, nor do we want to. And so goal number 3 to me does not anywhere address changing to be more culturally responsive within our existing staff members right now. Instead, I see all about how we're going to hire new people. And so those 2 things don't make sense to me when we're talking together about existing resources that we have and we want to keep. So I think there needs to be some tweaking somewhere in there on that.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
makes sense?
it makes sense, but I think if you look then at the building once you see the building strategies, this, and I'm sorry, Christy, the book that the board members have in front of them right now, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain is in essence laying the foundation and the groundwork for us to work with our staff along those lines. So that's some of the very first work we'll do with all staff, as we come back to school. And I can tell you, in the document I put a sample, it'll come up a little bit later, of just a sample building level plan. And I think as you kind of start to look through that you'll kind of see how the higher level pieces start to move towards more specifics in the buildings. And because we're working on those together, as administrative teams and schools and departments, you get more synergy, around that work and around the ideas than if we were all trying to do it separately. Again, that's the beauty of having the strategic plan that we are going to. Let me show you just for a point of reference. It may give you more weeds than you want to think about. Let's see, I don't know. Linda, can you bring the PowerPoint back up? You've got mine in front of you that I just sent you. I had made a couple of tweaks on this one, and I noticed this was a PDF, so it wasn't actually the same, working on the same drive. That's why there were a couple little in a little different order there. I'm not sure. Is Linda, are you still with us? Here she comes. All right. Yeah, so moving back, so on the 26th and 27th, we met with our admin team and we began to dig into together, to this strategic plan. And some of the first things we do is just what we're doing right now. We're looking at it together, you know what I mean, and trying to make sense of it together. There has to be a lot of this, that goes on, when you're starting to roll out a strategic plan. So you'll see some of the things like the beautiful artwork on the board that many of our administrators crafted over the course of a couple days. But it's just simply like taking the mission statement and saying, what do those words mean to you? And having folks get a chance to get their head around it, the words, what they mean, what they might mean, what it looks like, you know what I mean, in terms of a vision to them of a community. So we worked through the plan, and all the elements of the plan and engaged in activities to make some group sense out of it, some team sense out of it. And that just is a part of the process. We're also thinking about, so how do we introduce the strategic plan to staff when they come back in a couple of weeks, and it can suggest some of those activities that help us just get into that and understand that this is an important part of outlining the work and the way we do our work over the course of the year. So we, in essence, we're working through that, and then The other aspect, of the work is to start to think about what's your theory of action about how you're going to support the goals of the strategic plan at the building level. And then what are you going to do in the next 100 days to start to move it forward? So that's the kind of thinking that that our administrative team needs to do. So we worked at thinking about what our theories of action are. Again, we kind of expect that anytime we do something, we should do something with the notion that if we do this, we're going to get this result. And so we're trying to build that habit of mind, just like a teacher goes into a classroom with a theory of action. If I do this and this and this, kids will learn or know or do this and this and this. So we worked through the strategic plan that way. We thought about theory of action around that. Go ahead, Linda. Yes. And in essence, kind of made the case that here's how we're going to do our work. We've got a strategic mission, vision, values and goals. And let's make sure that we align our systems at the building. And in essence, what this chart, are you with it? Are you on this chart? And you're okay, good. With this chart, we're in essence kind of saying, let's start to build our school work plans aligned, to the strategic plan. Let's think about what you're gonna do in our buildings or our departments over the course of the next 100 days. And then these cycles, in essence, we're saying, and we're gonna give building support. Exactly what you're talking about is, kind of the little internal accountability system we're building for ourselves. So we're going to be giving building support, principal support, around their cycles. How are you doing? How are you moving? Here was the plan. Buildings will have areas of instructional focus. And we'll be in there working with principals and others about how they're moving. They're supporting their teachers who are supporting their students in causing the type of learning and opportunities to happen that we believe should have happened. So in essence, it's building these systems, that give us the kind of alignment so that we can actually attribute changes that happen in teaching and learning and in classrooms and in the community to the strategic plan. If we just left everybody to go make sense of it on their own and kind of go out on their own, that's we'll have that. You would have that system of schools rather than a school system. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And I'm not sure if you can. This is just a link to a sample of a very drafty building work plan. Linda, is that link live on yours? Can you pull that up? Great. Can you pull yours up? No?
We need access.
I'm not sure how I can give access from here.
Open Google Drive, change the sharing
So I'm going to share it or change it to, what would you suggest?
Anyone with a link.
Right. It's a scary one. She got a promise to give it back.
feel like you did want to share it with everyone.
Oh, well, anyway, will it open now?
Bill, I'm not, did you send me something or?
I'm hoping that I gave you permission to open that.
What's latency hell? You should be able to grant her access.
I don't know. Sounds like I'm denied again.
Did you ask for access?
I did request access. Says I might get an email, but Right now, I don't. Guess I need to stop sharing my screen, but I don't have an email from you.
Let's see, right now you're in that crew.
Let me see if I got something.
Are you able to open?
I haven't been, but it's okay. You can send it to me after for the
Well,
building plan.
Linda, I just sent you a link.
I always get locked out of Google Docs. I do.
Greg, you sent me a link. I'm not even getting email coming through, so I've refreshed 3 times. I don't know.
I didn't get anything from you either, Linda.
Okay. Great.
That's why I was stuck. Haven't got anything since 7/12.
You still haven't received the email, Linda?
Sorry, guys.
I finally got something from Greg. Let me see if it'll go.
Yeah, I'm not getting any emails.
I don't. Greg, you just sent me the same thing. It doesn't. Or maybe it's now.
Our technology doesn't seem to be talking.
No.
It's okay. Don't stress.
Crystal, can you open it with me? What page is it?
Yeah, you want to send it to me?
I just did.
Page 19 in the PowerPoint.
Linda, check an email from me, Dan.
There we go. Can you see that?
Okay.
Oh, Deanne, I got yours.
What I did was I opened the.
Okay, here it is.
There it is.
Oh, that's the actual. So that's the actual template, not in the PowerPoint.
Thanks, Deanne.
You're welcome.
Oh, so now I want to go down to, or this.
Oh, let's just kind of go ahead and go back, and I'll just kind of start to talk through it to the first page. So in essence, now do you guys?
Correct, yes.
Oh, here. I'll come share with you.
I can do it.
I got it from Deanne. Do you want me to send it to you guys?
Yeah, we'll turn it.
I have it on the screen.
I don't know if you can, 'cause I did it for you only, just don't, yeah, any.
Did you?
No, it says you have to share it
I-
specifically, you have to add them to it.
All right, so this is one Deanne and I have been working on. And in essence, we all have a similar template. We're actually going to come together again Wednesday and spend the day kind of comparing our notes after having kind of worked through this together. You see the mission, vision, values, and goals. Oops.
I don't know what I did. Oh,
Just close it. Just close it.
hold on. There we go.
Thanks, Linda. Thank you. Just scroll up a little bit. Yeah. And in essence, in this particular document, we remind ourselves of what the performance indicators are. So then as we start to think about our building plans, we stay on target. Go ahead and scroll up to, go ahead and keep scrolling up. So this was a little bit of a practice, a think through for us. Stop there at goal 1. So in essence, when we were in our workshop together, we asked ourselves around each goal. If you're thinking about each goal, look at the performance indicators. What would be the 3 most important strategies that you would use to start to approach that goal? So this is something that we did on the 26th and 27th. You see on the wall just a couple of examples of our teams going through each goal and then thinking about what at that time what those most important strategies might be. When we went back, we said we created a template for further thinking about those that will come back and coordinate tomorrow. So in this particular document, we said, okay, for goal number 1, what would be our little theory of action? If we do this and this and this, what do we expect to have happen? And then we took our 3 strategies, we've taken our 3 strategies, and we stated those a little bit more as a strategy than what we had drafted. And then we started to think about what would be action steps that would have to be completed in order to complete that strategy. Ultimately, we have to prioritize those, those actions for the next 100 days or the next 100 days after that. So as you work through this particular document, you might see more of the types of things that you would like to see at a little more. It's not granular yet, but as we start to move down to a little different level. So if you just go ahead and scroll through that to see strategy 1 has actions, strategy 2 has actions around it, strategy 3, and these are just our initial initial thinking about how we would organize for that. Goal 2, same thing, created a little mini theory of action around that, and then we started to put those together. Now, just as an example, let's go ahead and go down to goal 3. And see what was there. You scroll up just a little bit.
More?
I was just kind of looking to see if we had some evidence of what Christy was looking for. I thought we maybe had some work that had that level of specificity around preparing existing staff.
Well, provide training and orientation.
There it is right there. Provide training and orientation to frameworks for culturally responsive practice.
A question on this one.
As you start to get into some of those other levels, hopefully you start to see some of those types of behaviors and activities that you might be connecting as if you were developing work plans around that as well.
All of 3.2.
What's that?
All of 3.2.
Had a question on this one, if I could.
Sure.
So on the goal, if we go up to the goal number 3, it talks about percentage of staff who are skilled in the use of culturally responsive practices. And, there are a number of action steps here around, sort of conveying training, but I guess I'm just curious kind of where you see the measure of effective or skilled use of these practices. Like how are we actually sort of measuring how these, this information is delivered to students, I guess?
Yeah, ultimately, these are all under development, but you see descriptions of instructional frameworks. And so in essence, over time, as we become familiar with these instructional frameworks, we also establish the opportunity because in order to move forward with something, you have to have some opportunity to practice it and get feedback on it in order to get better at it. So we'll be creating tools so that in different situations, we're able to observe. Everyone will know what we might be looking for, because that's maybe the area of instructional focus of that time. So if we're in classrooms or in staff meetings or in professional learning sessions, we have a framework that we're using to observe, that has some of the specifics of the frameworks that that we choose.
Mhm.
In that, in this case, there are instructional frameworks related to specific content areas and broad aspects of teaching and learning. And the materials from Zaretta Hammond also has some frameworks around culturally responsive practice, that we'll use together with those other instructional frameworks to create our tools for observation and feedback.
So would you, I guess, envision that there would be an action step here that would be included that would sort of capture that, observation and feedback and kind of continuous improvement cycle that you just mentioned? I mean, would it make sense to include that as an action step, or is it already in there?
Yeah, and I think it actually, there's something in this particular, remember, this is just the high school, so this isn't the whole district. So each, so each of our buildings and departments are thinking about this kind of a model of what that would be, and then we'll bring it together, to see how we can centrally support and work on those things together. But share the end of your question again, Richard.
Well, I guess I'm just, as I'm thinking about these action steps, I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your thoughts.
I remember. I think in this particular one that that is mentioned actually maybe in goal 1 or goal 2, kind of the notion of building, using our instructional frameworks for observation and feedback.
Okay, thank you.
You're exactly right. There has to be an action step around that. To your point. So anyway, I wanted to share this to kind of show where this, where this notion of rolling things out, and hopefully you can kind of see how, as leaders engage in this together, really we're also doing this thinking about how we're going to engage our staff in this together. And as we do that, we are also kind of sharing the frameworks with our community, in terms of that. So that's all a part of opening school. And you can see in the aspects of the communication, it seems like a small piece, that notion of how we communicate the strategic plan, but it's a big, it's actually a really big strategy, is developing how we communicate, around this plan and engage and do it in a way that engages others and again helps each part of our school community make sense of it more broadly.
So just real fast, I appreciate seeing the strategies and action steps here. And I like to see the resolution you've put into as how you're going to do training with existing staff. I think that's great. I will go back and say that I don't think that the goals in other things that we talked about before this reflect the strategy, though, of training the existing staff. I still think there's a confusion on the wording on there, and I'll leave it at that. We can follow up later, but I like what you're showing here, but I don't think it's reflective of the higher up picture.
The language may not. I will tell you that it absolutely is our intention, Christy. So we're with you on that. So we're absolutely with you on that. Maybe some of our other colleagues will have better language that we can steal.
So are we too late in the process for changing the language to reflect what you're actually going to do? I guess I'm unclear as to where we are in that process. Sort of like what Richard was saying.
I don't.
Can I add something about that question? There were a lot of very involved and engaged staff members and community members and teachers that really settled on those goals as being really, really good. Their intention is what you said, but those were the words that they chose. So I am reluctant to accidentally make them feel like their work wasn't important by shifting it. As long as I know that the intent lines up and what we're trying to accomplish, but I really want to keep the language that.
Yeah, and actually, as I'm thinking about that and processing that a little bit, I think that, you know, the goals, you know, are really, you know, crafted as they are. I think we all have given ourselves permission. We all established our top 3 strategies. I think we were just sort of in that notion of working with 3s. That doesn't mean we wouldn't have other strategies, Christy. So I think that can be accommodated in under a strategy. Does that make sense?
I do hear what you're saying, and I respect the amount of time and energy that's gone into this, but I'm a little concerned that this is our first look as a board, and that the response is that we're not changing what's written so far. So I would have rather have seen these goals and other things much earlier in this process. And, you know, maybe I'm the only board member who feels that way, but I think it would have been great if we could have had this conversation earlier so that we could all be on the same page, as opposed to just receiving a somewhat final document as a board.
Christy, I'll second you on that. I don't really have a issue so much with the goals as I do with the performance indicators and the measures. I feel like those are pretty soft, and for something that we're going to release to the public, I don't know if I could necessarily stand behind those as the way they're documented here. I like the goals. I feel like there's work to be done on performance indicators and measures.
Well, keep in mind, this is in essence a year 1 of a 3-year plan. So those would change annually. That would absolutely be the intention. You can go ahead and move forward. There was the notion, you know, there are some things that are mentioned in instructional frameworks, culturally responsive, you know, teaching and learning, and other aspects of the work. And just wanted to share in this presentation that there is something behind that. It's a nice research base, but we always like this cartoon when things seem a little abstract and you need to bring it home a little bit. So the next slides are just some examples of some of the materials and frameworks, you know, that we are working from for culturally responsive practice. Go ahead. Some good research-based work that comes out of the University of Washington Center for Leadership that we use to think about frameworks for instructional improvement. Go ahead. In essence, kind of just showing some of the work that was in the workshop that we did a couple of weeks ago. You can go ahead and move forward, Linda. Some notions about leadership and how you lead change, and thinking about leading change from a building level, from the principal level. There's some important leadership concepts there about what you lead with versus others. Go ahead, Linda. Go ahead, one more. Some instructional frameworks for principals. These are really well thought out, research-based instructional frameworks for leading buildings. They'll be what we'll be using for our principal to help principals think about how to lead for instructional improvement and what those frameworks are. Go ahead. That's okay. You keep going. Yep, I got them both on one slide there. We also know we have some systems of support for instructional frameworks for our emerging bilingual students, our English learners, that we will be developing school-wide. And so we have some frameworks of support for that, for supporting leaders and teachers and staff in incorporating those strategies into the work. That's part of culturally responsive work, is making sure that all students have access to content, and in case of our English learners, access to language development in the classroom. We know that we are going to be using some clear systems to think about early response and intervention, and or how to shore up our core instructional practices or those types of things in certain areas. So our multi-tiered systems of support in particular areas. And again, just wanted to want you to know that we have some clear frameworks. They're good, solid, research-based frameworks that help hang the district together around common practices, language, and those are part of the pieces of aligning, and coordinating our work across the district. And we absolutely are learning together. And I know we are all on the same mission. I think if you go back to that, I started the presentation with the mission statement, and I said, once we kind of get into it, we're on a mission. And so really it's about the mission. It's about moving that mission forward once we get to August and start working together towards that. So thanks for the opportunity, and we appreciate the questions and concerns. And I know you have a group of folks. Those are some extra ones for your own leadership thinking and planning. I know this team around us, and I know Ginger, and we're paying attention. Our job is to move the vision of the board forward. So we're good listeners about those things, and we want to do good, for the board and for each other. That's what internal accountability is.
Well, I do appreciate all the time and energy and effort that all of you have put into this. I know it's been hours and hours and hours. And I think that we're close to where we want to be. I mean, me personally, I just struggle with the have faith we're moving in that direction component. I really need some hard portions of data to be able to be sold on anything like that. I need to see hard evidence that that's where we're moving towards, and follow through. That's a huge challenge that I am in this chair on this side, the follow through and the transparency of bringing metrics to the table, even when they're not positive. Like, I prefer the Band-Aid to be ripped off if we're in a bad situation.
Yeah. I hope you didn't hear that I'm
so.
afraid of bringing not positive data forward, but I wouldn't want to bring
No, yeah,
unvalid data.
right. But I just, it was really hard not receiving any data last year except for once, and it was incomplete. And we did have students here the entire year. So that was a real struggle. So that's where a lot of my concerns come from.
Yeah. So help me to understand. So you have the high school theory of action, what you're kind of calling it.
It's our work. We're starting to roll out our work plan. Yeah.
So do all the buildings do that then?
They're all in the process of working through that in departments. And on Wednesday, we're coming together, and we're going to share. We'll share with each other. And because a lot of us are thinking about how can we provide central support, for the work that we're doing.
So we have a retreat coming up, and we kind of talk about our goals, and we could do better defining goals and following through and being accountable and all that. We always struggle with that too. But would it be perhaps better for us to also develop a board theory of action? And in that, we can delineate our expectations for accountability and metrics. And we talked about parent engagement, how that might look like, a number of other things. Would that be a place that we could, do that and then work with you guys and understanding exactly how, when we might get reports this year and what they might look like. So I don't know if that's just an idea. And then when Jerry came to us at the beginning of this process, he gave us examples of what the other districts had done that we worked with, and it was like a handout, a little pamphlet, that you give to a community member, pictures and very nicely done and all that. Is that similar to what we will be producing for our
Yes.
district?
Mhm.
Okay, so that might be nice for us to see before it's distributed, for one thing.
You don't want to get surprised.
No, you know what I don't want, and I'm gonna be very honest. Okay, the term culturally responsive, cultural responsiveness is like throughout this whole thing.
Mhm.
And I have a bad memory, and as a board member who's been here a long time, I couldn't tell you right now, if somebody said, what does culturally responsive mean? Like, I'd stutter, I wouldn't know exactly how to define that. So I'm telling you, if I got that mail, in mail, I'd say, this is just a lot of stuff, Educanese, and I don't know, maybe my culture is just fancy talk, I don't know what the hell it means. So, I hope that we're gonna word that in a way that people are gonna understand what we're trying to, what culturally responsive means. And you can remind me too.
Like a glossary? Would that be-
No, not a glossary, just.
Not for you, I think,
Yeah.
should we put a glossary?
You could do it for me, but I'm just saying in a statement. I'm just saying in a statement, like culturally responsiveness looks like this. And just put that in a paragraph form, so people can understand what we mean by that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, so that's.
Yeah, and honestly, in anticipation, some of those kinds of questions, that Greta Hammond's book is really a nice read. It's pretty easy to read. It's really accessible, and it's really helpful in helping to, for us to make sense of it at that level.
Thank you for. all
No,
this
thank
work.
you.
It's
Yeah,
a lot of
thank
work. I think
Yeah.
this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
I will tell you, and I think I speak for most of us, there's, one of the things that, that a board can do is have a compelling plan, one that your staff really wants to get into and do the work around. And I think as people look at, and it was from comments, from core planning and comments from the implementation team and others who had their eyes on it, the general notion is this is the work we want to do. This is the right work. So, I think, what I mean, that's the beginning to actually causing the results that you'd like to have happen. So, and I think you heard it from Jerry too. This is a compelling strategic plan. You can have them, if nobody wants to really do them, they're a little harder to get the results for.
Anybody online have any comments before we're done?
I'd just like to say thank you for all the work and for the presentation tonight and for the conversation. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Richard.
Alrighty, thank you very much.
Thanks for making the technology work, you guys.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Linda.
Yep.
Thank you to everybody who came.
Yes, thank you guys.
That's not fun on that, obviously.
And thank you, team.
This is good. They did all the work.
Copy of the various actions that I think I gave to everybody. Everybody has access to it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So I have a couple, before we adjourn, a couple of notes. We will most likely have a vote with some contracts coming up in the next, I don't know, we talked about the next 10 days,
22nd?
maybe.
I was just wondering, do we know when the teachers are gonna be able to vote on that?
They talked about a deadline of the 18th.
Yeah, that's what they sent to their staff. I mean, that's what the staff member told us.
So if
Beyond that,
if
we haven't
that's-
seen it.
If that's the case, you'll probably have to preside over a meeting. And I will just zoom in, because I'm gonna be
yes.
gone for a
Yes.
week, so. So anyway, keep that in mind. It might be, what do we have to give for notice, Diane?
24 hours.
24 hours.
We can do it virtually because of, like you did the other one, because it's, a short, number one item.
It's gonna be.
I still may have you preside just because I don't know how my connection will be, so.
I won't have connection from the 20th through the 28th. Not anything reliable anyways.
But prior to the 20th, you would.
Yeah,
The 20th is a Saturday. I don't see us doing it on Saturday, probably. get there done by 8:15.
I'll be in the
When did Linda need it by? Did she want to-
We can't do anything until it's given to us.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying to make, if you wanted to try to make, what was the date you said? That was, like, do we have to have the vote done, our board vote done by the 18th?
I was thinking that if we could get it officially from one of the negotiation members when they plan to close the votes and then get the outcome to us. If we knew it was on the 19th, we could just schedule a meeting for, say, 3 o'clock that day and be ready to go. A virtual meeting, and we could schedule that 24 hours before or even now so that we're ready if that's the case. But if we get a concrete time of when they expect to have their votes counted and back to us, that would be helpful for everybody.
Okay, well, we'll just be flexible.
So who would we reach out? Would you be able to glean that information from their team? Yep.
Second question, do you have any need for board members at welcome back for staff? Any civic battles events coming up?
We are doing the scheduling tomorrow
Okay,
and talking about it as a team, putting it together, and then I will send an email.
okay. So maybe be prepared for that if you guys want to come up there after staff. With that,
I'm gonna be gone 3 weeks.
I guess we'll adjourn. 8:07, thanks you guys for coming out and doing this on this evening. So.
I'm going to the Caribbean, I'm gonna go on a cruise, and then I'm flying